Hi, so let's talk about composition versus inheritance. Composition is when you have components. Let me just call them components just for it to be easier. So you have components and then you're using these components to make something, to compose something, to build up to something. So like let's say I want component A and B to form this component AB here. Right? So they're loosely coupled. That means you can do anything to these components separately away from this, and then its implementation will just be applied where it's been used. And then this also has a relationship, which we will just see in a bit. Then we have inheritance, which means you have a parent, a base, a starter, and then other things take what that parent has and then use it on themselves. Right? So in this case, because we have a parent with A, B, C, and D, all its children will have A, B, C, and D. So what's differing here is that in this case, when we created this component in composition, we chose what it'll have. However, in this case, when we create children, in the case of inheritance, when we create children, the children will just take whatever that parent has. So there are use cases where this is good, and there are use cases where inheritance is good, and there are use cases where composition is king. So let's look at an example. I have this example here. I'm not an artist, that's why we're doing this. So this is the car I could come up with. So let's talk about a vehicle, right? A vehicle can move, a vehicle can honk, and a car, I believe, is an example of a vehicle. Or you can think of any vehicle, a car, you can think of a saloon car, I guess. Basically, I do not know cars again, but I know it well enough to just know the basics. So I know a vehicle, all vehicles move and all vehicles honk, right? Then I also know that a car has an engine and it has wheels. So therefore, when we want to create this, now when we're thinking about composition and inheritance, this provides an opportunity for us to use both. Because all vehicles can move and honk, that means all vehicles can inherit from all cars. Like this car I'm creating here, if I create a lorry somewhere here, if I create double cabin somewhere here, all of them can inherit this. All of them can inherit this because they all move and they all honk. Right? And I will assume for this case that they move forward, back, they move the same way, and they honk the same way. Now, cars also, a car has an engine and it can have different engines. The engines can be different depending on which car. And also a car has wheels. So, for this, we can say that because a car is a vehicle, then it will inherit from vehicle. Whatever vehicle has in it, we'll just take it as is. Because a car has an engine and a car has wheels, we can create those as components that cars will receive, right? And when we say that they are components that the car will receive, that would also mean that probably in another video, we can have different types of engines and we can change them dynamically. We can have maybe 3 wheels, 2 wheels, whatever wheels, and we can change it also dynamically depending on which car we choose. So we'll also look at that and what now components allow us to achieve. Also, just for people or for a person doing web development, basically what backend does for us when you have a product, let me just write it down here. in a real example for where it has been implemented in a front-end application, whenever you have, say, you're creating an e-commerce site and you have products, you have an order, you have a user, automatically it always just creates a class for this, creates a class for this, right? And creates a class for this. And then you have base functionality. Like talking about controllers, for example, you may have base functionality that all controllers will take in place. So this will take this will take this, and this will take this. And therefore, by us doing that, then they are all inheriting. All these classes, products, order, and user, inherit from this base functionality, right? And then from there, you have products, and products has an order, right? So in this case, this means that composition already is in place. Like internally, they've implemented for you inheritance by you inheriting from the base class. They've been implemented for you inheritance. And then down here, by you having products, a product has an order, right? They've implemented for you composition. So maybe it's good once in a while to dive into the C++ type of languages just for you to actually implement this, but also you can have it in mind while you're doing whichever languages and see how you can implement them. In JavaScript as well, you will see composition when you're working, like let's say in React, and you're developing you're creating your components, right? One way you could choose is to have a component that does everything, one component, but another way, like let's say I am making a stepper, let me just say a tab, like I'm making tab components, right? I could choose to just make a tab component that's just one major big component that does everything. Like it has those at the top here, you have those tabs, and then it has its content. Or alternatively, I could choose to make them as separate components. Like I have the tabs as a component, and then the content as a component. And then whenever I want to use, and then I have a wrapper component, right? I have the wrapper component. And then whenever I want to use, let me just do that, but just know it's a wrapper component. Whenever I want to use any of this, I call this wrapper and then wrap the components. And then I call this within it, right? And then I also have this other component in here. So you're composing, you're creating this component. This is the tab header, and this is the tab component. Content, sorry. So by us doing this, it allows us flexibility in that whenever we use this, there could be a time where the tab header and the tab content appear at different places. Or the way we want to control the tabs in this scenario, or the colors, or the whatever we want to use for this particular place we're using this tab, right? We need it to be different from other places. So by us composing it, it allows us to just use it as one. So that again is an example of composition. That's it from me today. Have a good day.